$200,000 at 60. I'm going to walk you through the specific 3-lever system that makes this number work past 85, give you the Social Security timing calculation that costs most people between $40,000 and $60,000 over their retirement if they miss it, and hand you one number that matters more than your account balance, that almost nobody calculates, and that rewrites the entire math problem from the ground up. Here's what nobody in financial media will actually say out loud. According to the Federal Reserve's 2022 Survey of Consumer Finances, the median retirement savings for Americans between 55 and 64 is $91,500. Not the average, the median. The person in the actual middle of everyone who saved anything at all. And every retirement calculator you've ever seen, every projection tool, every advisor presentation, every YouTube thumbnail with a number above 2 million was built to solve a completely different person's problem. If you are anywhere near that median, you have been running your retirement math in a tool that was never calibrated for your situation. The numbers look catastrophic, not because the reality is catastrophic, but because you're using the wrong ruler. So if the industry built all of its tools for the top of the curve, what does the math actually look like in the middle? That's exactly what this video is about. $200,000 at 60 is not a disaster. It is a specific math problem, and specific math problems have specific solutions. By the way, I built a free early retirement calculator because most online ones are mathematically wrong. It uses BlackRock and Vanguard methodology to expose the actual weak points in your plan, and I only ask for your email to send you the report so I don't store any of your financial data. Link is in the description. Before I show you the 3 levers, I need to give you the mental model that is going to anchor everything else in this video. Without this frame, the individual numbers float around and don't connect. With it, the whole thing clicks. Think of your $200,000 as a gas tank. Not full. Let's call it 40% capacity. You need to drive cross-country. The trip is 25 to 30 years, depending on your health. You are not making it on 40% alone. That is physics, not pessimism. But here is what gets left out of every single retirement conversation. There are gas stations on the route. Social Security is a gas station. A part-time income of $12,000 to $15,000 a year is a gas station. A paid-off house is a gas station you have been sitting inside without thinking of it as fuel. The entire retirement math problem at $200,000 is not about whether the tank is full. It is about whether you know where the stations are and whether you have planned your route around them. Every time I introduce a new income source in this video, hear it the same way. Another station on the route. That is, all retirement engineering is at this level. Route planning with an incomplete map. We are going to complete the map. Now, in a few minutes, I'm going to show you why the standard retirement calculation is actually designed to make your situation look worse than it is. And once you see it, the $200,000 number transforms completely. But first, the single most expensive financial decision a 60-year-old makes, and most people make it in about 30 seconds without ever looking at a number. Social Security timing. People treat this like a scheduling preference, like choosing when to pick up a package at the post office. It is one of the largest financial decisions of your life. The math is precise enough to calculate down to the specific month. Almost nobody does that calculation. You can claim as early as 62. Your full retirement age, the point at which you receive 100% of your earned benefit, is between 66 and 67, depending on your birth year. If you were born between 1957 and 1960, that age is 66 and a half to 67. Wait until 70, and you collect 124% of your full benefit, an 8% guaranteed annual increase for every year you delay past full retirement age. That is not a market return with uncertainty attached to it. That is a government guarantee. On a concrete number, say your full retirement age benefit is $1,800 a month. Claim at 62 and you receive $1,260. Claim at 67 and you receive the full $1,800. Wait until 70 and you receive $2,232. The break even between claiming at 62 and claiming at 67 sits at approximately age 78 to 80. Meaning, if you live past that point, and the average American who reaches 60 today has a life expectancy of roughly 83 to 85, depending on gender and health, waiting mathematically wins. Not emotionally, not in some abstract long-term sense. Mathematically, in total dollars collected over a lifetime, the problem is obvious and it's real. You need income now. If your monthly expenses are $2,400 and Social Security has not started, your $200,000 portfolio is under maximum withdrawal pressure from the first day of retirement. There's a story I keep returning to whenever this subject comes up. A machinist in the Midwest, I'll call him George, retired in 1999 at 60 years old. His plan was elegant. Delay Social Security to 70, invest aggressively during the bridge period, let the market grow the portfolio while he waited. Every number on the plan worked. The plan had one load-bearing assumption it never flagged. Then 2002 happened. The S&P fell roughly 49% over the course of the bear market. George was selling equities at the bottom to pay his heating bill because that was the only place the money lived. By 64, he was back at the plant filing rehire paperwork. He eventually claimed Social Security at 66, not 70. The elegant optimization produced HR paperwork instead of a beach chair. The plan has to survive a bad market. That is the only plan worth building. The financial advisor who designed the aggressive bridge strategy is still in business, still charging 1% per year. George is explaining inventory software to a 22-year-old at a hardware store. Nobody made a documentary. For most people in this specific situation, modest portfolio, no other guaranteed income floor, a body that is tired of the work claiming Social Security at 62 is often the operationally correct decision. Not because it maximizes lifetime benefits, and for healthy people, it probably does not. But because it creates an income floor immediately, it puts a gas station on the route between 60 and 67. It reduces the monthly withdrawal pressure on the portfolio, and critically, reduces the probability that a market event in years 1 through 3 of retirement forces you to sell assets at exactly the wrong time. That specific risk sequence of returns risk is the actual retirement killer. It is almost never discussed in the same conversation as Social Security timing, even though they are deeply connected. And I have a story about a guy named Dennis that makes the sequence of returns problem concrete in a way that no statistic can. Dennis comes in a few minutes. First, the part that changes the whole picture. Here is where the entire framework flips. And I want you to stay with me because this is the insight that changes how you read every other number in this video. You think the problem is that you don't have enough money. The actual problem is that you're measuring the wrong thing entirely. Every calculator, every advisor presentation, every retirement planning tool runs the same number. Total savings divided by total monthly expenses. $200,000. $2,400 a month in expenses. 4% return assumption. Result? Your money runs out somewhere around age 76. That math is technically correct. It looks like a catastrophe. Now run the calculation that actually matters. Social Security at 62, $1,250 a month. Monthly expenses, $2,400. Income gap, $1,150. How long does $200,000 last at 4% growth if it only needs to cover $1,150 a month? Approximately age 83 to 84. Same portfolio, same expenses, same rate of return assumption, completely different answer. The only thing that changed is which question you asked the portfolio to answer. I think about a retired postal worker named James in South Carolina who spent 3 years delaying retirement because every calculator he ran told him he was behind on his number. A colleague showed him the income gap model took about 8 minutes with his Social Security statement and a piece of paper, and the math changed completely. He wasn't behind. The calculator was measuring the wrong thing. He was behind on a made-up number the industry had given him. He retired at 62. He told me later that the 3 extra years he worked past what he actually needed was the most expensive financial mistake of his life. Not in dollars. In time, which it turns out is the thing retirement is actually about. This is the income gap model, and it rewrites the problem entirely. Your portfolio does not need to replace your income. It needs to fill the gap between your guaranteed income floor and your actual monthly spending. That is a much smaller number. It is a much more solvable problem. And it is the number the retirement industry has no incentive to explain clearly because a small income gap requires a modest portfolio, and a modest portfolio does not generate meaningful management fees. How meaningful? Over 30 years, a 1% annual management fee on a $200,000 portfolio costs you approximately $107,000 in lost compounding. Not fees you write a check for growth that never appears because it compounds silently out of your balance every year. $107,000 on a $200,000 starting position. That number should land somewhere between quietly enraging and deeply clarifying about whose interests the standard advice is actually serving. By the way, hit subscribe if you like this. Otherwise, the YouTube algorithm may genuinely never show you my videos again. Now, Dennis. Dennis turned 60 in 2018. $230,000 in a rollover 401k from a manufacturing company where he'd worked for 26 years. Methodical guy. He had read the books. He had done the research. His retirement strategy was sophisticated in its logic. Delay Social Security until 70 for the maximum benefit, invest aggressively during the bridge period, grow the portfolio from $230,000 toward $400,000 before beginning withdrawals, then draw from a much larger base. Every number worked on the spreadsheet. The spreadsheet had one assumption baked into every cell that it never surfaced: 2020. Dennis's equity-heavy portfolio drops to about $155,000 at the bottom. He moves to bonds not because he is irrational, but because watching a third of your net worth disappear over 4 months does something to human decision-making that no spreadsheet model prepares you for. He misses the recovery. By 62, he has $190,000 less than he started with at 60. Social Security was supposed to start in 8 more years under the original plan. The bridge had been engineered entirely around market growth. The market did not read the plan. Dennis went back to full-time work at 62. What happened to Dennis is called sequence of returns risk. The average market return over 25 years might be 7% annually. But if the first 2 years of your retirement are down 35%, you are selling equities at the bottom to fund your grocery bill. Those shares do not recover inside your portfolio. They are gone. The remaining shares compound forward, but from a smaller base. The average return over the full period can still show as 6 or 7%. You can still run out of money. Sequence of returns is why average historical market return is the most misleading single number in retirement planning. It describes a mathematical world where all returns arrive in a convenient order, and nobody needs to sell anything along the way. That world does not exist on any calendar. This is where it gets really interesting, because the fix is almost insultingly simple. Before you retire, not after the first correction arrives, but before hold 12 to 18 months of your income gap in a high-yield savings account. In early 2026, those accounts pay between 4 and 5% annually. 18 months of an $1,100 monthly gap is $19,800. That money sits in cash. If the market drops in year 1 or year 2, you pull from the cash, not from the portfolio. You leave the portfolio alone. You give it time to recover. When it does, you replenish the buffer. You repeat. This mechanism does not require financial genius. It requires a decision made before the problem arrives, which is when decisions are cheapest. The retirement industry's recommended solution to sequence of returns risk is generally a variable annuity with a guaranteed income rider. Commission on that product runs between 5 and 8% of the premium. The actuaries who designed the product pricing did their math with impressive precision. They just didn't do it in your direction. Dennis ended up fine, not because of his investment strategy, because he owned his house $310,000, fully paid off, no debt. At 65, after going back to work for 3 years and stabilizing his position, he set up a home equity conversion mortgage and started receiving approximately $850 a month in tax-free income. Claimed Social Security at 67, which is full retirement age for his birth year. 100% of the benefit, not the reduced 62 amount. Stopped full-time work at 65, he is 68 now. Not on a beach, not traveling anywhere, but he controls his own time. His bills are covered, and no one is calling him about the early shift. The house was the emergency gas station. It was not in the original plan. It saved the plan anyway. And this brings me to something that genuinely surprises people when they see it correctly for the first time. A paid-off house is not primarily a lifestyle asset. It is a financial instrument. one of the most tax-efficient wealth positions available to a 60-year-old with a modest investment portfolio. Here is why this matters mechanically. A home worth $300,000 that you own free and clear is generating the economic equivalent of rent you are not paying every single month. In most mid-sized American cities right now, renting a comparable property costs between $1,400 and $2,200 per month. That is real purchasing power, invisible on every retirement spreadsheet you have ever been shown, but completely present in your actual financial life every month of the year. I know a woman named Carol who retired at 62 in an Ohio city. $215,000 in savings, Social Security of $1,300 a month, and a house worth $290,000, fully paid. By the standard retirement calculator, she was behind her number. In reality, she had no housing costs, no mortgage, no rent check, leaving her account on the first of the month. Her actual cash gap from the investment portfolio was under $1,000 monthly. At that drawdown rate, her portfolio was still meaningful at 78. The calculator described a crisis that Carol was not experiencing. Now, put Carol in a rental at $1,600 a month. Same $215,000 in savings, same Social Security, same everything except the housing. Her monthly cash gap from the portfolio jumps to $2,100. The math runs out around age 72 to 73. That is 12 fewer years. Same person, same income, same investment return, different housing situation, and a 12-year difference in how long the money lasts. A paid-off home is not a secondary consideration in retirement planning. It is a primary variable that most retirement tools simply do not model because they were not built to. And if things run lean in the late 70s, if the portfolio gets thinner before Carol expected, the home equity conversion mortgage is there. Not as the plan, as the gas station she knows is on the route if she ever needs to stop. Here is the architecture. 3 piles. This is genuinely everything you need. Pile 1 is your floor income. Money that arrives every month regardless of what the stock market did this quarter. Social Security, a pension if you have one. A fixed income source that does not fluctuate with the S&P 500. This pile covers your non-negotiable monthly expenses, housing costs, food, utilities, prescriptions, the things that are not optional. You build this pile first. You protect it obsessively. You never put it at market risk. A floor is a floor. Everything else rests on top of it. Pile 2 is your gap filler, your IRA, your 401k, your taxable brokerage account. Its single job is to fill the gap between your floor income and your actual monthly spending. Not your total monthly expenses, the gap. Invested conservatively enough that a bad market year does not force you to liquidate positions at the bottom. For a 60-year-old in 2026, a 4 to 4.5% net return in a bond-heavy conservative allocation is a working target, not a guaranteed promise, but a reasonable expectation that does not require you to take risks that keep you up at night. Pile 3 is your emergency station, 12 to 18 months of your gap amount in cash, in a high-yield savings account earning 4 to 5% right now, not invested. Not generating an advisor's fee, not at market risk, specifically available to fund your monthly gap expenses during a market downturn without touching pile 2. This pile is what separates the plan that survives a 2020 style event from the plan that produces rehire paperwork at 63. Floor income, gap filler, emergency station, 3 piles. That is the whole architecture. Everything else is commentary. Now here is what I have been building toward the entire video, and I want it to land clearly. The retirement industry sold you a product, the aspirational retirement, the beach, the cruise, the resort pool. That product costs between $1.5 and $2 million to fund passively, and the median American at 64 will not have it. But that product is not what most of you actually want. I've had enough conversations with people approaching retirement to know that what most people want is simpler and more reachable than any advertisement suggests. Stop doing the work that is breaking down your body. Control your own mornings. Be present for the people who matter. See a doctor when you need to without checking whether you can afford to miss a day. that retirement does not cost $2 million. It costs a sensible income gap strategy, a cash buffer, a realistic part-time income for a few years, and respect for what your paid-off house is actually doing for you financially. The industry's incentive is to make you feel perpetually behind because perpetually behind keeps you in accounts managed at 1% per year. Their revenue scales directly with your account balance. Moving the finish line forward keeps you on the track longer. I am not calling it a conspiracy. I am following the incentives. That is what any reasonable person should do. Dennis made it. Not with a sophisticated strategy. With an emergency gas station he did not know he would need until the day he needed it. 3 specific takeaways, calibrated to this situation and no other. First, calculate your income gap before you calculate anything else this week. Monthly expenses minus every guaranteed monthly income source, Social Security, a pension, anything that arrives regardless of the market. Write that number down. That is the only thing your portfolio actually needs to fund, not your total spending. The gap, if you have not run this specific number, you genuinely do not know whether $200,000 is enough for your situation. Neither does any calculator that has not seen this number. The gap calculation changes the entire math. It is the single most important retirement planning step that almost nobody takes before they start worrying about portfolio returns. Second, build the cash buffer before your retirement date, not after the first market correction arrives and you are already selling positions into a falling market. Before, 12 to 18 months of your gap amount in a high yield savings account paying 4 to 5%. This single structural decision is the difference between a retirement plan that survives a market downturn in year 1 and a plan that generates the kind of HR paperwork George and Dennis both had to fill out. It requires no additional savings beyond what you already have. It is a reallocation. It is the highest protection, lowest cost action available to you right now, and it takes 1 afternoon to set up. Third, price earned income in early retirement as a portfolio multiplier, not as a consolation prize or a sign that the plan did not work. $10,000 to $15,000 a year in earned income, 12 to 15 hours a week doing something you can tolerate, kept below the 2026 Social Security earnings test threshold of approximately $22,300 reduces your monthly IRA drawdown so dramatically that it can extend the life of a $200,000 portfolio by 10 to 15 years. Not 2 or 3 years, 10 to 15. Not from making better stock picks, not from accepting more market risk, from working 12 hours a week at something manageable while Social Security and the portfolio do the rest of the work. That math is better than any investment strategy available at this account size. And there's no product to sell attached to it, which is probably why you have never seen it on a chart in an advisor's office. The gas tank is at 40%. The route has stations. You do not need a bigger tank. You need a better map. Lazy investing built more fortune than crypto memes. And the advisor charging you 1% per year to manage the money, you have been exhausting yourself trying